What's going on, you guys? I'm just finishing up some things before I go for a walk. I want to talk about the recession. Here's the thing. Speaking as a millennial, I feel like for a lot of late Gen Xers, early to late Gen Xers, millennials, and Gen Z, our three generations, roughly 1965, ever since 1965 and on, right? Between our three generations, we haven't really seen the upward mobility that the baby boomers had. We haven't seen that, okay? And that's just keeping it real. Like, when you look at the opportunities as far as the economy hasn't been healthy for most people on Main Street in over, really, just keeping it real, hasn't really been a decent economy since the late 60s, early 70s. And I'm talking about people on Main Street, everyday people, working class, working poor, middle, trying to get to middle class. Everyday people on Main Street. The economy hasn't been our friend in quite some time. When we look at jobs, the jobs that are available to us are low wages, low and stagnant wages, little to no benefits. And if you are fortunate, blessed, privileged, lucky enough to have benefits, when you look at the fine print, they're not that good. Okay? Because, I'm lucky, blessed, privileged to have health insurance, but I have a $3,000 deductible. So, yeah. It's really not that great. You basically have to pay $3,000 out of your pocket before you can actually benefit from your health insurance, because those deductibles and copays, oh my goodness, it's ridiculous. And then at my job, because the wages are so low and stagnant, if you're working just a strict 40 hours a week, you're not even bringing home $1,000 every 2 weeks. So a lot of people either work a lot of overtime like me. I'm working at least at the low end. At the low end, I'm working at least 5 hours of overtime a week. And that's at the low end. That's almost a full 1 day of overtime, right? At the high end, 10, 20 hours a week. Easily. And you're pretty much incentivized to work overtime, because if you don't, you're not going to make over $1,000. And overtime at my job, lucky, privileged, blessed, is time and a half. Which our time and a half is probably what we should be making any freaking way if we were actually keeping up with inflation and the cost of living since the late 60s. We probably should be making $23, $24 an hour any freaking way. On top of the fact that I have 4 college degrees, 2 associate degrees, 1 bachelor's degree, and 1 master's degree. I should be making that any freaking way. Right? I'm driving 40 minutes to and from work. The cost of living. And I personally believe, I don't care what your education is. I don't care what type of experiences you have. Nobody working a job full time should be living in poverty or struggling to make ends meet. We need living wages. Now, I have seen places like Popeyes in my area that is paying people $15 an hour, which gives me, I'm grateful and happy that they're finally making $15 an hour. Granted, they deserve more in my opinion, because $15 an hour is not a living wage. Again, I make roughly $15.96 an hour, and no, we deserve more. We deserve more. Like I said, you're not even making $1,000 take home. Because after they take out the taxes, and then you got your health insurance, then you got your 401k, if you're lucky and privileged and blessed to even have a 401k, you got to pay that. Then you have to pay all these other, like, municipalities. I get taxed 4 times. I got to pay the city that I work in. I got to pay the city that I live in. I got to pay the state, and I got to pay federal. It's like, by the time they're done, you know, taking money, you're not bringing home $1,000 after 40 hours, right? Because the wages are so low and stagnant. Then when you look at a lot of us, Gen Z, or Gen X, Millennials, Gen Z, a lot of us are trapped in massive debt. Okay, like, you got student loans, you got credit card debt, you got hospital bills. People are trapped in massive debt. For me, literally 98% of my debt is student loans. I owe, $47,000 student loans, man. And again, we go to college with the propaganda that's been force-fed to us about, you know, how we're going to make all this money, how we're going to be successful, you know, we're going to have decent jobs and careers, we're going to make a decent living, and that's a bunch of hogwash, right? And I know people are going to throw in, well, you shouldn't be going to school for stuff like what you went into because those aren't real jobs. I'm not going to argue that because, quite frankly, I understand where you're coming from and I agree to a certain extent. On the flip side, you need sociologists, you need political sciences, you need people who have their education in psychology, etc. Where else are you going to get policies, laws, and legislations out if you don't have those people? Who is going to do the mental health work? Who's going to be the social worker? Who's going to be the counselor, the therapist? Who's going to be the teacher? Who's going to be the policymaker, the educator, the podcaster, the YouTuber? You say all of our education is useless, yet you need us to make the world go round. So is it that our education is useless, or is it just the fact that these jobs and these companies and businesses and organizations refuse to pay a living wage, even though they're making millions and billions of dollars every month, every year? I'm sorry, but Amazon can afford to pay everyone $23, $24 an hour. You're literally about to be a trillionaire by 2026. You can afford to pay people $23, $24 an hour as the base income. As that should be the minimum wage should be a living wage. I'm just going to go on and say it. It makes no sense. Okay, then when you start looking at housing, rent, oh my gosh, the cost of housing and rent is skyrise. Now, granted, yes, it's more economically sound to buy a house than to rent, to buy a condo than to rent, buy an apartment than to rent, buy a mobile home than to rent, you know, buy a trailer than to rent. It's much more in your best options in many cases, economically, financially, to buy than rent. This is very true. However, because a lot of our credit scores are screwed over because of student loans, credit card debt, hospital bills, a lot of people don't have decent credit scores. So they're not going to be eligible to even get a home loan to begin with. This is why a lot of people find themselves constantly renting and renting and renting, never owning anything. On top of the fact that not only do you need to have a decent credit score, you know, I would say at least a 640 FICO, right? You need at least 640, a 640 FICO, at least, in many cases, to be eligible for a home loan. You know, which you can go through FHA, conventional, USDA, veteran, the VA. There's so many different home loans that you can go through and programs you can go through, and who knows, I might do a video discussing that. as well, because I do want to talk about home ownership on this channel eventually. But housing and rent is skyrocket. Now, there are certain locations, like what I've noticed, like in my location in Flint, Michigan, you can literally get you a house between $500 and $800 a month in rent. Easy in Flint, Michigan. Easy. Hell, Genesee County, easy. Now, when we add Genesee County, I would push it from 500 to probably like 650 to 1,000. You're going to be able to find a decent place. In Flint, 500 to 800, you're going to be able to find a decent place. But the minute you go to Ann Arbor, Detroit, Lansing, Oakland County, Wayne County, you know, you're going to notice that the rent prices skyrocket. Like where I'm looking to relocate, it's about an hour away from where I'm currently at. You're lucky if you can find something less than $1,000 a month. Most of the places are $1,000 a month and up. So again, you're not making $1,000 every 2 weeks, yet you're expected to pay $1,000 or more a month for rent. Again, when do we get a break? You don't want to pay us a living wage, but then you have the cost of living is so high. Rent is astronomical. Then we got to talk about food. Food prices have skyrocketed. And the sad part is, even before coronavirus, food prices were high regardless, okay? Like, you can easily go to the grocery store, spend $100 and not even have a full shopping cart. Easily. You know, like if you're buying laundry detergent, cleaning supplies, let's not even talk about adding in meat, dairy, you know, water, fruit, vegetables, etc. Shit costs money, man. It's expensive. Then transportation. Unfortunately, in Michigan, we don't really have a decent mass public transit system, you know, because we're GM, General Motors. We put America on wheels. Yeah, and once again, GM constantly does this to everybody in Michigan. Every time GM gets a chance, they're just like, okay, because they always screw the workers over. They screw the people over. And you're also talking about another company that doesn't pay their fair share in taxes. Hence why Michigan looks the way it looks. I'm just being real, right? We can constantly give these companies and corporations and businesses tax cuts, yet they don't pay their employees living wages. They're finding every little way to strip them of their rights. They don't want you to have unions. And even when you have a union, your own union in some situations can kind of screw you over and be in bed with the damn corporation. But that's a whole nother video. Stay tuned. But it's just, it's mind-boggling to see the atrocities that when people say, you know, oh, we're going into another recession. And I'm just always sitting back like, for Gen X, Millennials, Gen Z, when did we ever leave the recession that we previously were in? As far as I'm concerned, we're still dealing with the recession that came in 2007, 2008. And if people that are from Flint, Michigan, really coming into the 2000s, Michigan was already going downhill. Okay, literally, Michael Moore has a documentary that came out in 1989, Roger and Me, which is literally talking about General Motors plant in Flint, Michigan. Okay, so we can go back 31 years ago and already see the writing on the wall that the economy for everyday people on Main Street was already falling down, right? So fast forward 31 years later, it's 2020, and we've been in a recession since February, and it's June. So 4 months of us being in a recession. And I'm just sitting here like, well, when did we ever leave the 2007, 2008 one? Because again, wages are still low and stagnant. Upward mobility is a thing of the past. I mean, the way they have us with the student loan debt and the credit card debt and the hospital debt, people literally need to graduate college making six figures out the door if they're actually ever going to get out of debt and still be able to live. I'm just saying. And you would think, six figures is a lot of money. It's not in the grand scheme of things, because even people that are making six figures, if you owe six figures and you making six figures, you're screwed. You have people who literally owe six figures worth of student loans. Luckily for me, I only owe $47,000. So if I was to make six figures, I could pay that student loan off and still etch by, but I would still be barely making it because like I would probably be living off of $26,000 a year still, because I would still need to pay $47,000 back because that's student loan debt. And let's face it, when Uncle Sam's going to get his cut, right? So you might as well go on and say, you're going to lose about 25% of your income in taxes. So I use that six figure, let's say you're making $100,000 and you lost 25% of that. So now you're at $75,000 and you still owe $47,000. So you're not even going to be able to live off of 26. You see where I'm going with this? It's really bad at how high the cost of living is, how much inflation is, despite the fact that productivity is at an all-time high and has always been at an all-time high. Like, people work their asses off and are extremely productive and extremely hardworking, but we're not paid for any of our productivity. We're not paid for our hard work. Doesn't make sense. We're extremely productive and hardworking, but yet we don't have anything to show for the hard work and the productivity that we give. And that is ridiculous. That is shameful. And I don't see how this country continues to allow that to happen. Like, we have to talk about classism. We have to talk about poverty. We have to talk about the wealth disparities and this is horrifying. The 1% keeps getting richer and richer and richer, and everybody else keeps getting poorer and poorer and poorer. I mean, like I said, from Gen X on, Millennials, Gen Z and on, none of our generations have the same upward mobility, resources, and opportunities as the baby boomer generation. When I look at my grandparents, they were able to come from Jim Crow South, Mississippi, and Arkansas, go to college, no debt, have a career, make a decent living, buy rental properties, start their own rental property business, raise a family, and here I am. If my grandma and grandpa are first generation, my mom and uncle are second generation, and I'm third generation. If we're just looking at it from that. And no, we don't have those same opportunities. Yeah, we went to college and we're in debt. Where are the decent paying jobs? Where are the living wages? And we're in debt. On top of the fact that you're still dealing with racism, white supremacy, homophobia, transphobia, sexism, misogyny, and you're also dealing with classism and poverty. It's like, what gives? So I do want to talk a little bit about this article, and this is from New York Times. The U.S. entered a recession in February. The pandemic forced the economy to contract sharply, ending a record expansion and prompting the group that dates U.S. business cycles to formally declare a recession. So, yes, it is what it is. The downturn is the first since 2009 when the last recession ended, which again, I was in the 11th grade and here I am, 11 years later, 27 and a half, almost 28, and I'm in another recession. Again, my entire life, it's pretty much been problem. Like I said, going back to 1989 in Flint, Michigan with Michael Moore's documentary, Roger and Me, 1989. I was born in 1992. So literally, my whole life, Flint has been going down the drain. Michigan has been going down the drain. This country has been going down the drain. Like, I'm just saying, okay? When the last recession ended, it marks the end of the longest expansion, which was 128 months, which is a record dating back to 1854. So that's that. It's really sad. So the unemployment rate, a crucial gauge for economic health and an important input to business cycle dating, began to rise in March before jumping to 14.7% in April. Literally, in April, we were at 14.7, almost 15% of the population that is eligible and able was unemployed. Now, in May, it reduced to 13.3% in May, which, they released that data last week. But that is still extremely high. And if we're really being honest, it's probably higher than those numbers. Let's just be real. All right. So, again, I just want to put this out there as well. The global economy as a whole will experience its deepest recession since World War II this year, according to a World Bank forecast released today, Monday. Global output will shrink by 5.2%. The institution said, warning that while growth is likely to rebound in 2021, a more protracted pandemic that leads to a breakdown in financial markets and global trade could darken the outlook. So again, I didn't read all of it. I just needed to look at, key things, and I'll post some links to this so everyone can do their own research. And I really encourage everyone to do their own research. Seriously, we're using smartphones. We have tablets. There's Wi-Fi. If you can sit up and tell me all this other shit that's going on, you can also look this stuff up as well. That's all I'm saying. But y'all, I'm leaving this question to the viewers, to the subscribers. Did you realize that we had got out of the previous recession? Did you still think we were in the previous recession? Are you aware that we're in a new recession? How do you feel? Let me know what you think in the comment box below. That's a serious question. How do you feel? Then, what cracks me up? They always have so much shit to say in regards to millennials, right? Like, oh, you guys aren't having kids. Oh, you're not having children. You're not starting families. You're not getting married. You're not buying houses. And then millennials and Gen Zs, and I'm sure Gen X as well, felt the same way. How are we supposed to start families when we're living in poverty? How are you going to buy a house when your credit score is either in the shitter because of the student loans and the hospital bills and the credit card debt? Or if, like, my credit score is actually over a 640 FICO. However, if I was basing my eligibility to get a loan off of my current job salary, wages, I'm not eligible. Ain't that some shit? Like, how am I only working in the mortgage industry, but you're not even paying us enough to benefit? But that's a whole nother video. and then they expect you to have children? How are you going to take care? You are barely making ends meet by yourself. So how are you going to add another human being, another mouth, another human to the equation when you can't even barely take care of yourself? I'm just saying, oh, you're not buying a house? I just explained why we're not buying a house. And then, like somebody said before, a lot of us are graduating colleges with mortgage payments with no house. Because if you see how much money a lot of us have to pay if we're not on an income-based repayment plan with our student loans, there are people paying $800, $900, thousands of dollars a month on student loans. If I wasn't on an income-based payment plan, my monthly bill would be $512 a month. And again, I'm not making $1,000 every 2 weeks unless I work overtime. So again, and this is why I don't want to be pessimistic or negative about people going to college and getting their education, because education is amazing and knowledge is everything and we need it. However, this going into massive student loan debt to work these dead-end jobs that didn't require your education, or jobs that refuse to pay you a living wage, it's just not worth it if that's going to be the scheme of things. Like, people need to be paid living wages. This is ridiculous. Anyways, video is long. Let me know what you think in the comment box below. We'll be going live again Saturday on Instagram. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, or at least tune in for that, because I go live and then I post the video on my IGTV so people can look at it after the live. So you don't have to follow me, but you might want to create an Instagram account so you can look at the lives, okay? Anyways, I'm out.